Oh, Derby's coming up soon when you see that Keeneland spring meet graphic pop up. Oh, yeah. Barry Spears joins me to talk all about opening day at Keeneland, which is going to be on April the 5th, Friday, just a few days from now as we record this on Wednesday evening. Barry and me will take a look at the late pick 5, which includes some really nice stakes races and the traditional opening day feature with that Ashland. I guess they've moved the Ashland around a little bit. They've sort of changed the schedule. Sometimes it would be on the weekend, but this is going to be an awesome card that we get a chance to talk about, Barry, my friend. So now we kind of flip the page. The Gulfstream Championship meet is done. Now Keeneland will sort of be a focus, I think, for you and me probably for the next month or so.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is where I like to thrive and play well at Keeneland. It's such a tough meet. You're getting horses from everywhere trying to, win a race there, almost like at Saratoga. And it's always super competitive and you get prices, and that's what we like as horse players.
And what, as you were pointing out, makes Keeneland really difficult. The meets are short, and then you have these horses coming from everywhere. You'll have horses coming from the East Coast, coming from Florida. You'll have horses that were in Kentucky, then horses that come from the West Coast, all over for stakes races or just to try to get a couple races in throughout the short meeting with big purses and good racing overall. And this is one of those places where everybody likes to win a race at Keeneland. I got to mention, too, DRF right now has a full Keeneland section. Not only do they have the normal past performances and the picks, but every day, if you look at the tweets that come out, there's a full Keeneland section that has everything for Keeneland 1, all the articles that are news related to Keeneland, the stake schedule. It's a pretty cool just little resource where you can just find everything, help you just pull it up when you're handicapping the Keeneland races right there. And I'm sure you'll be able to get a little bit more news than you may have had before and updated on some of these races. So DRF.com for the Keeneland spring meet. And I just wanted to point out one more thing before we dive in. This isn't Keeneland related, but this is contest playing related. And this is something that I think a lot of you that are watching this video will be interested in. Saturday, Santa Anita Derby Challenge. It's one of those huge money, live money tournaments where there are NHC seats available. You can already qualify for the 2025 NHC seats. $75,000 estimated prize pool. You can play at ExpressBet or you can play at Santa Anita. So if you're someone that plays in these big tournaments and big contests, don't forget about that one this weekend on Saturday. Barry, buddy, you and I, let's talk about this pick 5 sequence that starts with the Lafayette in race number 6. So we'll look at races 6 through 10 on Friday, April the 5th. Those of you who want to follow along, we're looking at the DRF past performances. Remember, DRF.com. We are looking at the all access PPs formulator style past performances. Scatify is a horse who's cross-entered on Saturday, also at Keeneland. He's on the morning line. He's 7-2. I think he's a player in here just looking at some of the races he comes out of, and he does have that nice win a little longer and cuts back. His debut race is a little deceiving too. He was able to sit off the pace a little more than it might look. Doncho's probably the horse to beat in here. He's been very impressive, not really tested at all in his 2 sprints at Fairgrounds. He's listed as 5-2 on the morning line. I say Doncho. I mean, Booth and him will both probably battle for favoritism, I'd imagine. Booth has shown that he can sit a little bit, and Booth has 3 races. He's won 2 of them. He finished behind Just Steel in a stakes race. So this is kind of the top players and the major contenders in here. Some nice horses, though, also, Barry, where you look at Glenn Gary, who hasn't done a whole lot wrong. He's an Iowa bred. Right next door, you have an Ohio bred who's also really honest and has done literally nothing wrong, and he beat Open Company. So this is an interesting race because the top contenders understand why they are the top contenders with Doncho, with Booth. They've done very little wrong, but they're both pretty quick. And at 7 furlongs, there does seem like there's a possibility that they could be going fast up front.
Yeah, I mean that essentially is where the gamble is in this race, is whether or not you think that this pace is going to be fast enough for someone to come off the pace, because Booth and Doncho look head and shoulders above everybody, I
They're very
think
good.
anyway. Um, you know, more Booth than Doncho. The thing about Doncho is those last couple of workouts weren't very fast, and it was kind of odd. And then you see the horse coming from the fairgrounds over to Keeneland. It makes you wonder, if the horse is due for a little trough in his form cycle, but that remains to be seen. But other than that, he looks just as good as anybody. Probably is a lot more handier than what his past performance might say, meaning that he probably doesn't need the lead, but likes to be up close.
Yeah,
Same thing.
he sat off pretty fine last time. A little more than it looks. Actually, he was fourth early, just off, and then he
Yeah,
kind of worked his way up to second, sitting in the two path. He was about a length off, then he moved to the lead easily. It was impressive. I mean, visually, both of his races have been really impressive. That's what made this race difficult for me from a gambling standpoint. Is that I don't have as many knocks on the favorites, but I do also like a couple others that I wouldn't be shocked to see them run very well. A horse like Houdet,
yeah.
I would
Houdet is
real,
the
you
is
know,
the the third horse that looks like he's kind of ready to step up and run a better race than he's been running.
and because he's versatile. His first three races came against Ohio breds. Then they go over to Churchill Downs to see how good is this horse. And he's in a race where he beats a horse named Bergen and Mystic Dan. Bergen comes back to win the Winkfield. Bergen was only 4-1 in the Gotham, and he just didn't fire that day. And then Mystic Dan obviously wins the Southwest, comes back and finishes third in the Arkansas Derby. So he's winning that race. And if you look at him and you're a little concerned because his speed figures are light, when I know that he's beating really good horses, that the lower speed figures doesn't bother me.
Yeah,
When I
yeah,
know the
because
quality's good,
well, not only that is the race kind of sets up for him in a way,
he's
and
versatile.
he's probably going to run a lot better, at least speed figure wise, no matter where he
Just
finishes.
against this group.
Correct. And that's the thing about about this race that's really perplexing. But if the way I mapped it out is there's going to be a lot of cheap speed up front. Um, I would gather a horse like Baytown Chatterbox is going to try to go.
Has to go.
Glengarry has to go. Bolt at Midnight's going to go.
Yep.
So my prediction would be that the horses Doncho and Booth are going to be in that second flight right behind those leaders ready to pounce, and whoever gets through and finishes stronger will probably win. But if they really heat up front,
Or if maybe
Houdet is going to
seven's a
have a
little
great shot.
a
Yeah.
little farther than they would like,
Hmm.
perhaps, right? For both of them, we haven't seen them win at 7 furlongs yet. And sometimes that can be a difference. Both it didn't look like it should be an issue, but if they're having to work a little harder than normal, or maybe they sit and they try to make an early move to the lead and they get a little bit tired, Houdet is definitely one of the horses that benefits and could get a really nice trip. He's probably the most honest, or you can probably trust him the most at passing horses in here against this level. A horse like Frosty Indulgence came from way out of it. His race was super impressive. And again, a lot of times at Turfway, you get a little lower on the speed figures on the synthetic than you just might on dirt. But this is a tough group, and he's going to have to try to come from probably way out of it from the rail, which may not be easy. Even Scatify, who I thought his debut race was probably a little bit better than I think most do. He was really wide, and he kind of swooped that field at Los Al, and then they just tried to against a little bit tougher, and they put him in. He lost to Baffert horses going longer, and now he cuts back. I could see him sitting a little bit also. So it's a difficult race where what makes it very difficult for me is when I don't dislike the favorites as much, right?
Right. Yeah.
I don't see a as big of a, oh, yeah, I'm trying to beat this horse for this reason for sure. Um, because then I would like to normally say, okay, I'll just kind of key in on the one of these two horses or single one of them. The problem, as we pointed out, is that there definitely are versions of this race where you can get a horse like Houdet or a couple others into it. So it's not my favorite race from a gambling standpoint because it's kind of challenging and I don't dislike the favorites. For me, the easiest races are like, oh, yep, I think this horse is going to be too short. I can just chuck them out right away. Now who am I finding?
Well, that's kind of how I viewed it here too, because you figure Scatify, Doncho, Booth, and Houdet are the horses that will probably win this race. One of those four. The rest of them you can kind of toss. I mean,
It's
Glengarry does have some races that you could look twice at, but his running style doesn't fit.
that's
And
the
then when he
shape of the
gets
race
challenged, he
worries me
doesn't
a
really
little bit.
finish. Right.
Yeah, that would be the key. You're right. And so if it's not one of those four, I would be pretty surprised. And those will be the ones that take all the money. That does why maybe that's why we keep coming back to who day two. Just looks like this horse could fall into it, and of those horses should represent the most value to you in here if you're trying to play this pick five right off the bat.
Well, not only that, but this is the first race of the sequence, which is good because you can read the board for clues,
Yep.
at least in this race,
Yep. Get a look at horses too, if you
Mhm.
want to, in the paddock, or see what they look like before you make your wager. It's the only one that you can do that. So take advantage of that if that's something that you feel that helps you, right? If you're able to look at races and like a horse and use one or maybe change your opinion, then take advantage of just being able to do that here, because once you lock your pick five in, then you are set for the rest of the sequence. Let's move to race number 7. This one is one of these really strong first level allowance races. This is for fillies. These are 3-year-old fillies. They're going 6.5 furlongs, $110,000 purse in here. Some of the horses, Barry, that I think will be the major players that will take the bulk of the action and the support in here. We're going to look towards the outside with a few of them. The number 8 and 9, or the number 9 and 10, just from a gambling standpoint, will be very live because Amor Fati was impressive winning at Gulfstream, earned an 80 buyer speed figure going wire to wire that day. Roswell has been very good in her 2 starts, and she's done it like a pro. She sits just off the pace. She kind of moves, and really handy moves when asked. She just lost to a horse named Launch, who is very nice. We're actually going to see Launch came back and won the Any Limit Stakes, and Launch has won 3 of the 4 races since coming over here to the U.S. So Launch is a real quality horse who's in nice form right now. So no shame for Roswell losing to that one, who came right back to win next out. Those are the 2 who will take a bunch of money. But when you and I were talking a little before the race, we were both discussing a horse that we like, that we think is going to be a lot shorter than the morning line.
Yeah, I think Bourbon Breeze is going to take a lot more action. And has the ability in this race, especially with the setup, to outrun his previous buyers or her previous buyers. This race kind of interesting because the speeds in the race have only run one time.
Yep.
In maiden races, and they're stepping up into winners. And I don't think it's going to be as simple as Amor Fati just kind of running off.
No.
I mean, this horse is going to have some company up early with Best Kiss Yet. And if, with these younger horses, the paces tend to heat up when you have some speed horses, and
a horse like the 3, they want to be close because her best race was when she was right on the lead, sprinting, going 5.5. Last time out, she had to come from out of it. It didn't work. Now they put the blinkers on, and you go back to the jockey who is much more aggressive. And I think that's signaling that they're going to be involved early. I don't think Sam's Treasure wants to be too far out of it.
No,
they want to be.
That's, it's kind of the second/third flight that looks like they might be live in here.
Absolutely.
And the horse that kind of caught my attention the most would be Harbor Springs, kind of doing the same thing. I know she's kind of stretching out another half furlong, but I don't believe that, that was just a symptom of that horse just loving the slop.
No, not at all. She
Especially
wasn't like she got like a more overwhelming number than her debut, right? It was just like a little bit of progression.
Right. And I like the way that she came out of the race. That workout on the 29th at Churchill is solid for this kind of race, kind of rounding in the form, looking like this was, this horse is ready to run again and give a great performance.
She was in a monster race in her debut too. The winner of that
very
race,
live.
Galia Princess, won the Cicadia by 6. I think she's entered this weekend. I haven't gotten a chance to look all the way through the Aqueduct entries yet. Motown Dynamic came back and won by 6.25. You have Yes Indeed, who came back to win a maiden special weight by 4.75 at Fairgrounds. You have Bella Cruella. Shout out Milo, who loves 101 Dalmatians. Cruella de Vil. So this was a really strong race in the debut when they finished third. And I agree. This horse looks like one that could get a nice trip, just get a
Yeah.
good setup. You
Hopefully
know,
we get that price because that would be great. The other one, obviously is Bourbon Breeze, who's
yeah,
looking for that same kind of trip. You know, needed the race and kind of just I think they just gave that one before they shipped off to Keeneland at Tampa Bay. Didn't really run bad. That was a pretty
no,
good race in general.
she
As
was
as
kind of
far as
moved up.
races go, I mean, Destiny Star we talked about last week. Um, in Bourbon Breeze kind of ran decent behind that horse, even though she really isn't a turf horse. I don't
No,
believe.
the winner sort of opened. She moved up to third, but the winner had just opened up. She ends up winning the battle for third that day. She loses to Destiny Star. Destiny Star came back to finish third in the Sanibel Island at Gulfstream Park, earned an 81 Buyer speed figure that day, finishing third last weekend. So just go through her entire career. Win, lose, or draw for me as a gambler and as a handicapper. I love a horse like this that I look at and that makes sense. I look at her debut. She wins sprinting at Keeneland. It's a good effort. She comes back in her second start. She loses at Churchill to a horse named Torpedo Anna, who freaked that day, won by 9 lengths, earned an 87 Buyer speed figure. Anna came back and ran second in the grade 2 Golden Rod. Then she was off all the way to last Saturday when she crushed the fillies in the grade 2 Fantasy and earned a 91 Buyer speed figure in her first start in 5 months. Or what, 4 months? So that was a really nice filly that she runs into there. So you're not holding anything against her for that effort in her second start. She was only 5-2 against Torpedo Anna that day.
Yeah,
Then
I mean she's been formidable every time she's been on the track, and 20 to 1 is a stretch. I don't think we're going to get anywhere near that.
eight,
But on the other hand, 2 to 1 is probably too little to
eight.
take
I'd
for
say
that
eight.
horse. Right.
That feels
Anything
good to me.
over, I'd say anything over 9 to 2 would be perfect.
Me too. Like
I'd go
I'm
down
hoping
to 4 to 1.
6 to 8 is where is like the
Yeah.
bread and butter spot for me. The problem is sometimes when you have a horse like this who might be a little too high, there's that overreaction.
Right. And
And
people
then they
pour
get
in the money.
shorter because if this horse might have just been sort of set at around 8 to 1 or 6 to 1, a lot of people might just go, yeah, that's probably accurate, and not think of this one as one that stands out quite as much. She lost to Fiona's Magic, who comes back, runs third in the Forward Gal, and then wins the grade 2 Devonadale.
Yeah.
That
So yeah, I mean, she's
she's her
definitely going to be a
form.
contender in here. I mean, 20 to 1 is a
Yep.
stretch,
Now
but
second off the bench, back to the dirt. So it sounded like of the shorter prices, the way that you think the race shapes up, you would feel like Roswell was more the horse to beat than Amor Fati.
yes, absolutely. I
I
mean, just
agree.
running style
Yep.
and a little bit more of experience definitely favors Roswell over
Yeah,
the 9.
I think so too. I think this is the horse to beat in here. And we've given you some other fun prices to include. One that's a total wild card. I don't know if this horse could win this race, but I do think she's got some ability. Is this Maryland bred Just Great, where Pratt jumps on. This horse comes into the Arna Delacroix barn for the first time. So she crushes at Delaware in her debut. And then she hooks a muddy track. And the way she won that race, I think she just won because she's got class and because she's good. She did not like that off track very much. You could see she regressed in her speed figure. And she, to me, is a horse she's got a little ability. I just don't know what kind of trip she's got. And this is not the easiest spot, but my antenna went off a little bit. The fact that Pratt jumped on here, she's going to get Lasix for the first time too. She comes into a barn that's very good. It's a real quality barn. So if you're playing any sort of exotics, I wouldn't be shocked if this horse outruns her odds at 20 to 1 or hits the board, or you get a decent effort from her.
Yeah, no doubt about it. This is another tough race. I mean, the big field really makes it a lot tougher because there's so many things that can happen. I mean,
Pace
even a
wise,
horse like Buttercream Babe, if he
absolutely.
so happens to take to the dirt, I
Her
mean, this
form is
horse is
not
just
bad.
as good as everybody else, right? And been keeping very good company on the grass. I mean, it's like, why is this horse in here? And probably will get overlooked.
Really nice 7th race at Keeneland as we move to race number 8, the grade 3 Transylvania. So another really challenging race, but let's kind of highlight some of the top contenders right off the bat. You have First World War, who will be a major player in here. He won the Kitten's Joy last time out. He's run well in every one of his starts. His race at Keeneland, he was really wide that day. He finished 4th, but he ran a bang-up race, finishing 4th with a super wide trip, and he was involved all the way around, and he's got a little bit tired late. The 8 for Appleby, we've seen Appleby send horses in the last couple years, and these numbers, they're not typos. When you look at some of them, he wins just 35% with every horse he sends over. And over the last year or two, you'll see some statistics where you have like 50, 60, and 70% with winners, where it just seems like he knows exactly where these horses fit at the level. He'll bring them over. So Musical Art, just on connections alone, has to get a mention because of how live these horses have been the last few years, Barry.
Yeah, I mean, he's been just lights out. Either it was, at Santa Anita, at Belmont, or Saratoga, just, wherever he comes first time North America, it's almost automatic. um, that being said, he's not unbeatable.
No. And it started to tail off a little bit last year.
Last year,
I think
at the
it
end
was
of the
like
year,
2 years
yeah.
ago that was really good, and early on into 2023. And then what ends up happening, like always, they get a little bit overbet.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm thinking is going to happen on Friday in this race. But a horse that kind of stands out to me a little bit,
I
and
think I know where you're going.
I'm going to the 11, Full Nelson,
It's your
and
guy.
we actually kind of like this horse quite a bit in that
Yeah.
Fulmineo race in the Columbia back on March 9th at Tampa, and that horse kind of surprised us because we thought this horse was going to be on the lead and wasn't. Was close to the lead, but wasn't on the lead. In this race in particular, there is like almost zero pace. I mean, any horses that have shown speed like Neat, if you look at the race that horse went wire to wire or close to it, it was extremely slow. And
And
I mean, beyond that, there's really nobody else that really would want the lead in this race. So I think Full Nelson, who came off a good effort after a decent freshening, should probably be okay in a spot like this at a good number. The only problem is he does attract the best rider in the country,
so he'll get bet
so
a little.
his
Yeah.
price will get depressed a little bit. But I mean, from a pace standpoint, this horse is on the rise, getting better, has the pace scenario in his favor. Definitely got to take a long look at that one. The other one that kind of caught my attention was, the angle that I like a lot is Lord Bullingdon. The horse came off the bench after a decent kind of a layoff and improved. Usually that means they have another improvement in him, and Lord Bullingdon has that ability. He's been running well in better company and seems to be in the right spot here. So those two, at decent prices, I'm definitely going to key in on, probably use a little bit of musical act and see what we get.
He lost 3 times to a horse named Stay Hot. In a lot of the same races that he runs in. And Stay Hot's a nice horse. He lost to Endlessly, who now they're saying may end up running in the Kentucky Derby. They weren't sure initially. Endlessly, who has enough points to qualify. So you start diving into his form, and Stay Hot, he lost, then he wins. Stay Hot, he lost 2, and then he wins. Stay Hot, he loses 2. He loses to Endlessly, and he loses to Prince of Monaco, who was a really good Baffert horse early on, and that early on in his 2-year-old season. So he doesn't have a whole lot to knock. Let me give you a long shot for some of the things that you were pointing out. I do think First World War is probably the horse to beat because of what you were saying, right? He gets the trip, and there's just not a lot of speed, and he puts himself in a good spot. He's run well at Keeneland. Shouldn't have to be as wide here as he was that one day where he ran the only time he didn't finish in the exacta. So he'll put himself in the race. The 3, Langnose, who definitely can sit close in races. And so his Rebel last time out, he was a little more forwardly placed than it might look, but he was wide. And if you eliminate that race, they were just seeing where he would stack up. Can he get involved, at Derby points? We see this happen a lot with horses early on in the year. They tried him in the Smarty Jones, tried him in the Rebel. Well, the reason why they did that was because there was a race that was taken off the turf at Churchill, and he won that race and was pretty impressive doing it. So then it goes, we definitely can come back to the grass at any point because that's where he breaks his maiden. He wins nicely at Kentucky going 6.5. And he has really good tactical speed. And I would not be shocked at all if they have him really close to the lead in here from the inside, Barry, because there's not much else speed, as you were pointing out. And why else is he in a race like this? If they're not going to want him to be closing with the deep closers, use that tactical speed of his. Don't be as hard on him for the Rebel last time, and look at his grass form and just, project that he has some improvement in there, because he probably really wasn't. He seems to me like the grass was just his best surface, even though he ran a couple okay races on the dirt. That has more to do with his running style. If he puts himself in races where there's not a lot of speed and he gets a trip, sure, he can hang around for a slice, and that might be this race.
Yeah, I mean, Laganos is one of those horses that will win, and then afterwards you're like, wow, that horse made a lot of sense at a
And
big
shouldn't
price.
have been 15 to 1.
Right. I mean, for all intents and purposes, this horse seems to want the grass anyway. I mean, I think they just kind of went with it to try to see if they could get on the Derby
And you
trail,
can, when you
and it
see,
didn't
it
work.
makes sense. You understand
Mhm.
why they had a race that when it got, they try to get back on the grass, then the race got taken off the turf, and you win, and you go, hey, you know what? We've won going a mile and a 16th at Churchill on the dirt. We know we can do that. Let's give this horse a couple chances to see if he belongs with this group. They did. He didn't on the dirt at that level right now. So let's go back to what you do well and put him in a good spot. I think he can outrun his odds in here at a really nice price and
Yeah,
set a really good trip.
you don't want to take too short of a price on a horse like this. Even half
No,
the odds at 10 to 1 may be a little question mark. But, you know,
12,
this horse
15.
is yeah, this horse is gonna be kind of off the radar because Asmussen doesn't really win too many races on the turf. But the guy is the all-time leading trainer, so he wins races and he can get horses prepared. That's really all you want in a race like this with these younger 3-year-old horses. Um, definitely worth a longer look, especially during the betting and all that to see how things are going on the board.
And I was reading a preview that I think was from Marcus Hirsch from DRF, and there was a quote from Mark Cassie who said, "This horse is 10 to 1 on the morning line or whatever. If that's the price, go to the windows because they like this horse on turf." Here's another one who his turf form makes sense a lot. And my only real trepidation with him in this spot would be race shape.
Mhm.
Does he, as a deeper closer, get enough pace to run at? But as far as his form on the grass, he's a grade 2 stakes winner over this turf course. He was fourth, only beaten 2 lengths in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf against the best horses going long on the grass in his division. So he's not outclassed by any means. I just don't know if the race shape is there. And I do think he's one that will be much shorter than that price.
I'll say this. If this horse gets bet, I mean, and it's very possible that this horse gets bet way down from that 12 to 1.
Yes.
I am happy because
Yeah,
I just think
that is,
this horse is really up against it,
and the
kind of
price
close and
has to
way
be
back.
built into it. That's the
Yeah.
key, because if you're 100% right, like if he's 5 to 1 or below, which if I had to pick, do I think he's closer to 12 to 1 or closer to 5 to 1? I would say I think he's closer to 5 to 1.
Hmm.
And then that's where we start having to say, okay, with his running style in this race,
Doesn't
it
make sense.
is
And
at that price. No, if he's 8 and above, if he's where he is on the morning line, yeah, I could throw him in the pick 4 and pick 5.
I mean, one feather in his cap is he's got a win at Keeneland. But
He's certainly
I,
classy. It's just
yeah,
he's
he's
a
been
deep closer.
yeah, he's got to come from way out of it and needs a lot of help. And obviously it's not out of the question, but I'd be willing to bet against that.
because we're having a tough time even being sure who gets the lead in here.
Oh, I already
Right?
know.
That well, you know, and that's who we're hoping, right? I
I'm
mean,
only
and I
kidding.
think
Yeah.
it's Full Nelson, and like it could. I think there's 2 or 3 horses who, if we looked at and they were on the front end, it wouldn't be shocking. But
Yeah.
this isn't one of those races where we're going, yeah, there's going to be 4 horses lined up for sure on the lead,
Right.
and that's what makes it a little harder for a horse like, you know, the 10 Can Group, who will come flying late. He just really does need that trip from what he's shown us so far.
Yeah, a lot of old timers will tell you, you know, if you see on paper at least 2, or if you see 2 speed horses on paper, bet one of them. If you see 3, bet the closer.
Yes.
And you don't have that kind of situation here.
It's too tricky. It's too murky up front. Other horses, just what makes this race challenging, other horses that I don't necessarily love as much as I do, you know, there's some of their rivals in here. A horse like the 4 or the 5 would not be even shocking at all to see them run well. The 4 Neat has been very good on the turf. Just tough to get a feel for the Sam Houston races this year, but that race in particular came back really strong so far.
Yes.
And then Tennessee was a horse who was entered in a stakes race last week at Turfway, and instead they come over, or 2 weeks ago at Turfway, and they come over here. So he's in nice form, and he tries the turf for the first time. He's been working on the grass. I don't love them more than others that we've mentioned, but that's what makes this race challenging, because those horses aren't out of the question from running well in here.
No, not at all. I mean, if you take out Neat's Gun Runner, that horse has won 3 in a row on the grass, and you know, it seems to be getting better. The only thing is those races weren't very strong. That's the only knock.
Right. They've come back live. The horses that have come out of them to win their next starts, but he certainly hasn't been facing a group like this before.
Right.
So, and I don't know really, he could be in a nice spot. As we're saying, there's not a lot of speed in here, and I'm sure Raylu will probably want to get, he's not fat, like that fast, but he's definitely handy, and you can put him in a nice striking spot.
Yeah, and Tennessee, you know, I would say you have to demand your price there because the horse is first time turf.
Yep.
And I gather just because of the connections, this
and the
horse
price
get bet.
Yeah, and the price, he was a $1.2 million purchase, and even just at a glance, when you look at his pedigree, it feels like turf. So those factors will probably cut him down a little bit in a very challenging Transylvania here.
And one more. If there's some scratches and Royal Majesty gets in, definitely take a second look at that one.
I needed Cugino big time in that race last time.
Oh man,
on March the 2nd, he will be the issue with him, just the post
position,
right? Yeah. With his running style, because he doesn't want to have to drop way back, but he's not going to be able to sit just too off and without being really wide in here, most likely. And that's what's difficult. But hey, he'll be happy not to see Abrumar in the starting gate here.
This is definitely a spread race. I mean,
it is hard.
You know, I have the inclination, like on some tickets, maybe to single Full Nelson.
That would be great to do, to try to get yourself a little separation, right? And then you play a backup one where you go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, because even Oscar's World could jump up and
sit close, save ground, sit close. He hasn't run bad in any of his starts. He was behind Seminole Chief last time out. That was on the synthetic. He gets back to the turf. He was right behind In a Jam a couple times, who's this quality caliber horse. He'd be a player in this spot. So these are the races to me that scream Keeneland.
Yes.
A race like this where you just have so much fun going horse by horse through the field. As we move to the Friday feature, it's the Grade 1 Central Bank Ashland. You have the 1, 2, and 3 place finishers from the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies last year, which you don't always see in a race like this. A lot of times, some of those horses will retire early, will get injured, they'll be in different spots, but they all show up here. And you know what, Barry? I think all of them are going to really need to be on their game to beat Impel, who has been super impressive in her starts so far. She does have a little bit of a recency edge on them. So it's kind of like Impel, who's the now horse who has the bigger figure and who has two really impressive races versus the best of the horses from last year. Just
Yeah.
FYI, Jody's Pride, Candy, and you even have Leslie, who wasn't quite where some of these fillies were at that point of last year, but she has not done much wrong. She finished third in the Devona Dale when she was favored behind Fiona's Magic into Champagne. Came back and ran third in the Gulfstream Park Oaks last weekend. So this is a quality group of fillies in here.
Oh yeah, this is one of the probably better races we'll see all meet. As far as competitiveness between the 8 horses that are in it. Jody's Pride, who I did play in the Breeders' Cup and just got nipped. Looks like this horse came back running on March 2nd, and I think there's still some improvement there. Impel is a tough read for me personally, because I know those fields that she ran against weren't that great.
No,
She looked great doing it, of course. I mean, that's always what you want to see. But
this is certainly, I mean,
it's a class test for that horse.
I mean, the thing about her, and I think she's better than all of these horses, but here's what I'll say. She is going to be facing 1, 2, probably 3, 4, 5, 6 different horses who are probably better than any horse she's ever faced.
Yeah, easily.
So that's what makes it difficult. Is she better than all of them? I think
possibly. Yeah.
And she might be. And I think what I like about her, or what I think she has an advantage, and why I actually like that you mentioned Jody's Pride, because she's another one that I do, is that she just has the recent form. Versus Just FYI, who has not raced since November, and they had to reroute a little bit. They had other plans to start a little earlier, versus Candied, who has not run since the Breeders' Cup either. So those two, who I think are certainly talented fillies, they may not be quite as sharp right now as Impel or Jody's Pride. So I do like the fillies, I think, in here that have the more recent form, because it's such a challenging race. I don't think you want to be a little short coming into this race to be able to compete with some of the others.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And another thing about Impel is I thought those races were kind of 2 perfect trip wins.
Very.
And I don't know if she's going to have that easy of a time. I mean, it's definitely possible that she could get like the run of the race and win just like she has been.
Because if it's me, also, I'm sending her.
Right.
I'm not even messing around.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking through the race, is it probably the 4 and Leslie with Irad that would be like pushing her, or be up front also all.
And the 2, the long shot should
probably get out. So there's a few that will be in the mix early. So that's where it could hurt her if she doesn't want to sit off quite as much. Yeah, I mean, she tracked fine, but as you pointed out, it's one thing when you're tracking small fields that you're way better than. You can always do that. It's always easier to sit off in those races when you get bumped around a little bit, or maybe you try to go and then you get stopped and you get shuffled, or you want to go and you go a little faster. You get floated 4 wide into the turn or 5 wide into the turn. Then can you recover, kind of sit, and then make another move? So she certainly has some questions to ask. I just kept coming back to it thinking her, Jody's Pride, and probably like Leslie's Rose, for the reasons of the recent form.
Yeah.
Even.
I mean, one other one that I'll throw in there is the 4 Helena's Forte. I think that horse has some upside in a race like this. It seems like she enjoyed the stretch out last time and probably might enjoy a little bit more ground.
She's done so little wrong in her career.
I mean, that fairgrounds race, she didn't really get a good trip and still ended up finishing second, despite what the buyer number will tell you.
She came back and beat Gallia Princess, who won out of that race, won that impressive stakes race that we looked at earlier. So even her as a longer shot, definitely formidable. And the thing about a horse like Candied, she ran a bang-up race in the Breeders' Cup. Just the way that race shaped up, she bobbled at the start. She was like 9 lengths out of it early on. She had to move through traffic and then up and around. And just FYI, got the most perfect trip
Yep, of all
that day
time.
of all, and she won. We liked, we thought she'd run well. She did.
Yeah.
We thought she could get a perfect trip because that's the way the race shaped up. If they go a little faster in here, that layoff may not matter that much for a horse like Candy, who's just going to be probably running that last quarter mile of the race.
Yeah, that one's tough to get to because of the post position.
She'll have to
I don't
swoop with the short stretch.
right,
I
and I don't think they're going to try to, try to force that one to get position early because that might drain a lot of her speed
No,
at
she
the
doesn't. I
end
don't
of the
think she
race.
wants to do that. She wants to sit and make the one run. Um, it. She's just like watching that race. She was the one that I took the most from. I'm not sure if she is going to be completely ready for this. I could see them wanting to have a good second or third place finish from her and have her primed for that next step in the Oaks.
Yeah, and that seems like what the deal would be.
If she runs
But
well here, she might be a horse. She's probably the horse I'm playing in the Oaks. Just with
yeah,
the way, like, I just like the way she would progress into it with what she had to, with what she did last year, and then if she could take a step forward. But we see horses like this with just FYI every year. There's always a couple that don't make the step from 2 to 3.
hmm And then, honestly, I think just FYI is that horse. I really don't like that one in this spot. She wasn't all that fast last year. She's
No,
coming back off a long layoff.
she's had to be
I just,
rerouted a few times, right? I think she was supposed to be and the Devona Dale, but she scratched.
Mhm.
She had a fever. She's come back. She's worked well. I'm always just hesitant at taking the shorter prices when everything doesn't go to plan,
Right,
you
and
know.
that's the hinge there is she's gonna be bet and probably second choice at worst, because she won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies and she's 3 for 3. So I just don't like her in this spot. I mean, I would like her coming out of this race, but not actually in this race. And depending on what she does, she might not be on the radar for the next one either.
How are you sort of stacking them in this race for yourself?
Jody's Pride looks very good to me. I
At the
think
price, at the trip, at like with everything.
yeah, and Helena's Forte is the other one, and I think Leslie's Rose, and then I'd kind of shade a little bit towards Candied as a fourth horse. If I'm playing multis.
This is probably one that but one of the few times we were a little different because I do think I'll probably play one where I single impel just in case and play a bunch of stuff around. Then on the other ticket, the horses you mentioned, Jody's Pride is absolutely my next one. I think she could sit a nice trip, take that next step forward. I do like Leslie's Rose a little bit, and probably Candied would be my next tier of horses. But the Ashland, a super challenging, contentious field on paper. It looks like 5 or 6 of these horses could absolutely win this thing. Let's see what happens in the Friday feature at Keeneland. As we turn the page, Barry, to the closeout race for the Pick 5 players, race number 10, $100,000 maiden special weight, going a mile and 3/16 on the turf course here. Some of the horses that will be taking a lot of support, and I'm sure will be on a lot of folks' pick 4s and pick 5 tickets trying to close out the card. The 2 Hidden Presence has never run a bad race. She's been in the money in all 6 of her starts. And it's Johnny V will jump back aboard. So you figure she'll get a nice veteran ride in here. You have a horse like the 3 Guinevere, who for Wesley Ward will always take money at Keeneland. You have the 7 Missoula, who was very good in that turf debut. Flash Speed just missed. That was going a mile and an 8 that day. And then you have a horse like Just Deny for Danny Gargan, who was a good runner-up last time out. That one will take some money in here. So not the easiest spot to end your exotics if you're playing those pick 4s and pick 5s.
No, this is this is a tough race to end the sequence on because it's at a distance that is a marathon type, and you have all these young horses just trying to find their way. Horses like Hidden Presence, I tend to fade in situations like this
Yeah,
because this horse has had every opportunity to win races and just hasn't sealed the deal. And I don't think necessarily like a drop in class. The right field would do this horse good, and I don't think this is it.
I
Um,
think this is a tougher field than probably
yeah,
what she's faced in maybe her last couple. She's even lost to the rival Just Deny. And here's the thing. She's had a couple trips with some trouble, but she does sort of seem like one of those horses that doesn't want to hit the hole as fast as the other one does, right?
Yes.
And those horses do end up getting shuffled back. And sometimes it's their fault, other times it's not. There can actually be 4 or 5 races in a row where you do get in trouble and it isn't your fault. But when it starts to happen like that, it is really hard to be confident at that horse at a short price where she was just your beaten favorite last time out at Gulfstream Park. She's been, as you know, she's been in spots just like this over and over. So I
Yeah.
Warren, the connections, everything wouldn't shock me at all, but I feel like she's probably going to be 5-2 in here.
Right. And bet a little too much for my taste.
At the
Especially when I
short
think
prices, I probably prefer the 7,
yes,
Missoula.
because of the running style, and this horse is going to
Yes.
be forwardly placed. I don't think there's too much speed in here. Not
No.
that I think a horse can go wire to wire, which they obviously can. Missoula could definitely do that, but I just feel like a horse that'll be forwardly placed, but not necessarily on the lead, is going to have the best shot. And I think Justin Nye is one of those horses that should be in that
So
realm.
what I wanted to watch about Missoula's race too, for those of you who may not have watched the race, so you don't see this in the running lines, but there ends up being she gets the lead down on the inside, and then there's a loose horse in
Yep.
this field. And a little bit farther down, we end up seeing this horse impact her. Let's see, where do we get to? Right. Okay, so here we go. So she's on the lead, and this horse on the outside moves to the front. So when you're sitting there on Missoula, you're in a tough spot on the 3 because this horse is in front of you with no rider. You can't go up in front of the horse. You're sort of waiting behind the horse. Now, he had to like kind of right. He's looking around even behind him trying to see, okay, what's this 11 going to do? Is this horse going to corner with me? Okay, no, now I'm going to go. I'm not saying that it was the worst trip in the world, but it's certainly tricky when there's a horse like that that's loose in front of you and you're on the lead. And I think that determined when Missoula was going to be really asking for all, because this horse is still fighting here, like still has something left. They just weren't able to press the button at the right time.
Yeah, I think what happened is he kind of had to use the horse a little bit too early in order to maintain a straight path with that horse that was
And not
loose.
have the horse get over on him.
Right, and then he had to ask again, and it was just a little bit too much. And
Mhm.
and going farther might help this horse as well. And I can see
Settle a
why
little.
they're in this spot.
Yep.
Um, Lucky Speech is another one that improved a lot getting on the turf.
Yeah.
And I think that'll do this horse a lot of good at a decent price. Getting Tyler Gaffleone definitely helps. He rides very, very well at Keeneland.
So look
And
at
you
her
can see
debut. She
lost to
loses.
Impel.
Yep, lost to Impel in the debut, got crushed by Impel, then comes back in career start number 2. They stretch out. They are trying to get on the grass, but the race comes off the grass. Then they finally catch the turf on February the 29th that day. This horse got bumped around just after the start, settled 4th, was about 2 lengths off, and made a big 3-wide bid up to challenge. Just missed 2nd that day. Finished a very solid 3rd in the first turf start. I have no knocks at all with Lucky Speech. This horse is definitely going to be in the mix for me.
Yeah, the other is Moonlight Gambler, the one.
Absolutely. That's my top pick here.
I think that horse is going to definitely. I think the post position helps this horse a lot because it's going to force this horse to kind of get a decent position, especially going longer. It's this horse is not going to have to kind of shift or over. Maybe there's a little trouble or whatever in the beginning of the race, but the race is so long that all that kind of stuff can work itself out. You see, the
And he's
horse was
coming out of
favored last year.
races that were way quicker early.
Yes.
So he should be able to just sit more like he did at Keeneland on October the 27th.
And I don't
in
think
that
this horse
style.
really liked the synthetic last time either. I
Not
think
at
that
all.
was just a race to get a race into this horse before this Keeneland attempt at the big maiden special weight purse of $100,000.
Yep. He was inside. He was towards the rear. He was 9th early. He was only about 6 lengths off. but he had to make an early 4-wide move. Then he was 6 wide at the top of the lane. He actually briefly led, but a horse kind of blew by.
Well, you
Or
see in
actually,
the past performances though, the horses behind, or in the race with this horse, Pharaoh's Wine, who's we
so
just saw in a stake race, Austere and Plumeria, who were very good in the debut. I mean, this horse has been running really against really decent company and just hasn't had that breakout moment. I think maybe this one might be rounding into form.
another one you go race by race. You pointed out Austere, who came back to win next out. Austere's very live tomorrow. It's very live on Saturday. I'm talking about
Saturday, yeah.
Friday and Friday's card. Then comes back Pharaoh's Wine is another one who we just saw in stakes race recently. It was in the Sanibel Island. This horse is grade 2 placed. So every race you go through, it makes sense for Moonlight Gambler. And it's a horse who raced well at Keeneland, lost to Bushu. Bushu is a grade 2 winner. Won the Jets of it, and Bushu is going to be a very live horse running tomorrow, running on Saturday also. So you just go through, they all make sense. The race against Celtic Charm and Egyptian Gambler, another one where you have the runner-up come back and win next time out, and that's the race that sent this horse to the bench. So you can probably even be a little forgiving there. Comes back off the bench and just gets the nice little tune-up in order to turn around and come right back here. She was a clear-cut second at Turfway last time out, and she's my top pick in here. I thought the one Moonlight Gambler, I like 1-7. I had them as sort of my top 2. The 5 who you mentioned, very live. Hidden Princess will be like one of those that hits or Hidden Presence will be one of those that probably hits the board at least, or is under. But I prefer horses like the 5 to bet.
Yeah,
Lucky Steve.
I got 1, 5, and 9 in here. A horse that at a price that might show up might be the 12, Faith Understood. Out of Catholic Boy, Jonathan Thomas, who's doing pretty decent this year.
Just feel like you're going to get a better race here on the turf.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of trip this horse is going to work out, but maybe underneath in exotics, triples, superfectas, that horse might be one to include.
Barry, buddy, you and I are going to pull a little double duty this week with Keeneland because Friday's opening day. We're also going to preview Saturday. They have an all stakes pick 5. So for those of you who are listening, we will record that on Thursday afternoon. So by Thursday evening, we'll have the Saturday preview out. So before Friday, we'll already have Friday and Saturday previews out to help you. Barry, before we get out of here, tell the folks everything about Big Mondays, going in circles, and what you have going on right now.
Yeah. Always the Big Monday show. Every Monday/Tuesday, we're on the scene. Check us out. It's a longer podcast. So if you go to the gym, hang out, got not much to do, definitely give us a listen. We talk about all kinds of things in the racing industry, mostly not so much picks or anything like we do here. But it's always, I always learn something from Chuck almost every episode. So that, and I do it with them all the time. So I can just imagine the stuff that other people can pick up, and give us a shout.
Barry, thank you so much, my friend. Looking forward to picking your brain on the Saturday Keeneland Stakes races. We'll talk about those tomorrow. Don't forget, everyone, get to drf.com all throughout the Keeneland meet for all of your wagering needs there and all of your handicapping needs. Good luck playing the races. We'll be back with a lot more on a big weekend, Wood Memorial weekend, Santa Anita Derby weekend, big racing all over the place. One of those great weekends we love as horse racing fans. Hopefully we can help lead you in the right direction.